There are lots of ways to hone a card scraper. My way is not necessarily the best, but it's the one that works for me and it's pretty simple. So you'll see that I have this blue Sharpie arrow on one side. That allows me to know, okay, the side that is pointing to, the edge that is pointing to is the edge that I'm honing. And I only put that arrow on one side so that the flip side is not marked. And that way, when I'm going through the honing process and also when I'm using it, I know which side I've done and which side I haven't. So to start, I'm going to run both faces flat on a diamond stone. I'm using 1,000 grit diamond stone. I wouldn't go any lower grit than that. I don't think you need to use a steel file for this. That just wears it out too fast. So I'm just using my fingers to put pressure all the way across the face of it on the edge that I am going to hone. And I'm just going to run about 10 or 12 passes on each side. I'll flip it over and do the other side the same way. Basically, you just want to take off any remaining burr that is currently there. You don't need to put a ton of pressure on here, and I don't think you need a jig to be able to do this process. Just use your fingers, light pressure, like I said, 10 or 12 passes, and I think you'll be fine. So once I have that done, I know that both sides of that edge are smooth, and I'm going to use a square piece of wood. By square, I mean it is square within reference to the sharpening stone. So I want a 90-degree angle between that piece of wood and the sharpening stone. You can get jigs for this or make jigs for this. I don't think it needs to be anything that fancy. Any piece of wood that has a square edge will work. And now I'm just going to slide back and forth on that to put a flat edge on my card scraper. You can either just run it back and forth across the piece of wood, move the wood with it, whichever works best for you. I actually kind of like to move the wood with it because I think it helps keep it locked in place. It's not going to pull away from the wood and end up beveling your edge. So now I've got a clean, really nice shiny edge on that. If I would quit shaking it, you would actually see that it's nice and clean and there's no scratch marks. So I'm going to put this flat down on the edge of my workbench. In this case, it's right up against my vise, but any flat edge will work fine. Now I'm going to use a hardened steel burnisher. This is not a screwdriver with the tip ground off on it. It is actually specifically made for this purpose. Your screwdriver will not work. Trust me, I've tried it. It does not work. It needs to be very hard steel, harder than the steel that's in the card scraper. So now I'm just going to lightly press down on the face side of that edge. And what I'm doing is just making sure, one, that I don't have any burr left. And if there is any softer metal there, that I'm actually pushing it over to the edge side of the edge rather than the face side of the edge. So I'm putting light pressure on that, about a 5 or 10 degree angle. And I'm going to flip it over, do the same thing on the other side, do a few passes, I don't know, 10, 12, 5, whatever works for you. Then, once I've done that on both sides, and I feel that that's nice and smooth from the sides, I'm going to put this in my vise. I'm going to move it over in the vise so it doesn't slip through. I want to put it right over. Good job. I'm going to put it right over one of the through rods for the vise to make sure it's really locked in there good. I've got about an inch of it sticking up. And now I'm going to take my burnisher again. This time I'm going to put both thumbs behind it so I've really got good control of it. And I'm going to do about a 5 or 10 degree angle. And I'm going to push down from the edge side of the edge. I know that's very repetitive, but pushing down against that edge, I'm now going to start to form a new hook or burr to, I'm going downward here with my left hand if it's easier to say, it's the hand that's got the watch on the wrist. So you can see that I'm pushing downward with that a little bit more, about a 5-10 degree angle from the right side, and I'm creating that hook along the left edge. Then I'm going to flip this over and do the same thing on the other side, doing again about a 5 or 10 degree angle, pushing down on the other side. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm actually putting a little bit more downward pressure than I was on the sides. I want to kind of feel the burnisher digging into the metal a little bit. I want to feel a little bit of resistance. If you could hear this, if I wasn't talking over it, you would actually be able to hear a little bit where that metal is kind of digging into the metal from the burnisher is kind of digging into the metal on the card scraper and really getting that edge. So now I'm just testing this with my fingertips. Your fingertips actually are so sensitive. It's really a good test for how those hooks are. And I want to make sure that I've got a nice even hook all the way across. If you don't, put it back in the vise, do it again. Okay, so I've got a little piece of some kind of curly walnut here, and I'm just going to test this. What you want to see when you start pushing this, again, I'm pointing to that arrow to say, yeah, that's the side I've honed. What you want to see here is not dust, but curls. You want to see, just like when you're using a hand plane, you want to see nice curls. Okay, there, I'm starting to get the right angle, and you can see the curls starting to form. That means you've got a nice hook on there, and you've got a good angle, a good amount of pressure, and you're going to be able to make a nice, clean, smooth edge on your wood. You can do the same thing across the face of a board. I don't usually do wide faces with the cabinet scraper. Some people will. I just don't. I find it faster actually to go through with sanding, or if I need to take off a fair amount of material, I'll get the hand plane. But for edges like this, and especially if I've got a little bit of a curved edge, I will break out the card scraper. I just feel like it works really well for an edge, basically anything narrower than the width of the card scraper. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe.